Have you ever walked out of a conversation feeling strangely exhausted, even though nothing bad happened? No one argued with you. No one insulted you. Everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. Yet somehow, you came home feeling as if your brain had been running a marathon. Most people would probably tell you the same thing. You think too much. But what if that's not actually the problem? What if your brain isn't working harder because something is wrong with it, but because it's processing the world differently? For decades, psychologists have studied people with exceptionally high cognitive ability, expecting obvious signs of intelligence. People who spoke the most. People who answered every question immediately. People who seemed completely certain. Instead, they discovered something unexpected. Many of the traits most commonly associated with highly intelligent people don't look like intelligence at all. In fact, they often look like anxiety, indecision, oversensitivity, or even a lack of confidence. Imagine sitting in a meeting at work. Your manager asks a question. Within seconds, everyone around you has an opinion. One person says the plan looks perfect. Another agrees immediately. Someone else already wants to move forward. Meanwhile, you haven't said a single word. Not because you don't understand the problem. Quite the opposite. While everyone else sees one possible outcome, your mind quietly explores 5 others. You notice a number that doesn't quite fit. A sentence that sounds harmless but could become important later. A small assumption that nobody has questioned. Then another thought appears. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm missing something? By the time you've examined every possibility, the meeting has already moved on. From the outside, it looks like hesitation. Inside your mind, it's something completely different. Psychologists call this deeper cognitive processing. Highly intelligent people often spend more time evaluating information before reaching a conclusion. They don't simply look for an answer. They instinctively search for the best one. That difference seems small, but over a lifetime, it changes almost everything. It changes the way you make decisions, the way you build relationships, even the way you experience ordinary conversations. Think about the last time you went out with friends. Most people were simply listening, but maybe your attention wasn't only on the words. Maybe you noticed the friend who laughed a little too loudly, the one who kept checking their phone, the tiny pause before someone answered, "I'm fine," the awkward silence after a joke, the expression that disappeared before anyone else noticed. By the end of the evening, everyone else felt energized. You felt mentally exhausted. Many people assume this means they're antisocial. Psychology suggests another explanation. Your brain may simply be processing far more information than everyone realizes. Every face, every voice, every emotional shift, every contradiction between what people say and what they actually feel. That constant processing comes with a cost. Eventually, your mind needs silence. Not because you dislike people, because your nervous system needs recovery. This is one reason many highly intelligent people genuinely enjoy spending time alone. Not because they are lonely, but because solitude removes thousands of tiny pieces of information their brains would otherwise continue analyzing. Ironically, being alone rarely means their minds become quiet. If anything, the opposite happens. Have you ever climbed into bed completely exhausted, only to discover that your brain has decided it's the perfect time to replay every conversation from the past week? One memory becomes another. One idea creates 3 more. A simple question somehow turns into an hour-long mental journey. People often describe this as overthinking. Researchers describe it differently. Highly intelligent brains tend to build richer connections between different areas responsible for memory, imagination, planning, and reasoning. Instead of following a straight line, thoughts naturally branch in many directions. That's one reason creative ideas often appear unexpectedly. It's also one reason sleep can become surprisingly difficult. Then there's another misunderstanding. Many people imagine intelligence as something cold and logical, someone who never lets emotions interfere with reason. But psychology paints a much more complicated picture. Imagine seeing an elderly man sitting alone on a park bench. Nothing dramatic happens. He simply looks tired. Most people notice the scene and continue walking. Someone else notices the same scene and spends the rest of the day wondering whether he has anyone waiting for him at home, whether he's lonely, whether someone should have stopped to ask if he was okay. The event lasts less than 30 seconds. The emotional impact lasts for hours. Sensitivity is often mistaken for weakness. Yet research repeatedly suggests that many highly intelligent people experience emotions more intensely because they notice more information. The more details your brain collects, the more material your emotions have to work with. A beautiful piece of music feels overwhelming. An act of kindness becomes unforgettable. A careless comment echoes for days, not because you're fragile, because your mind doesn't filter experiences as quickly as other people do. This creates another strange contradiction. From the outside, highly intelligent people often appear emotionally calm. Inside, they're experiencing an astonishing amount. Many become experts at hiding it. They smile while processing disappointment. They stay quiet while feeling overwhelmed. Not because they don't care, because explaining everything happening inside their minds would take longer than the conversation allows. Then comes confidence. Or rather, the lack of confidence people assume they see. Imagine asking two different people the same difficult question. The first answers immediately, absolute certainty, no hesitation. The second pauses, says, "I'm not completely sure." Most people instinctively trust the first person more. Yet psychology has repeatedly found something fascinating. The more someone truly understands a complicated subject, the more aware they become of everything they still don't know. Knowledge expands certainty only up to a point. After that, it expands awareness of uncertainty. This is why genuinely intelligent people are often comfortable saying, "I don't know." Not because they're less intelligent, because they're more honest about complexity. Unfortunately, society often mistakes confidence for competence. The loudest voice wins. The fastest answer sounds smartest. Meanwhile, the person still thinking quietly in the corner is overlooked. Until weeks later, when the problem everyone ignored suddenly appears. Another pattern surprises researchers. The projects people care about the most often become the hardest to begin. Not because they're lazy, because they can already imagine what excellence looks like. Before writing the first page of a book, they've already imagined the last chapter. Before starting a business, they've already imagined every possible failure. Perfection appears before action, and perfection has a remarkable ability to stop people from beginning. Psychologists studying gifted adults have observed this repeatedly. High standards create invisible resistance. The mind becomes trapped comparing reality with an ideal that doesn't exist yet. Ironically, intelligence can make starting harder, because imagination always arrives before execution. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding of all is loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of feeling misunderstood. Imagine sitting at a dinner table surrounded by friends. Everyone is talking, everyone is laughing, yet you feel strangely disconnected. Not because you dislike them, because the conversation never reaches the questions your mind naturally wants to explore. Why do people repeat unhealthy patterns? Why does childhood shape adult relationships? Why do some people fear success more than failure? Instead, the conversation returns to weather, sports, office gossip, movies. There's nothing wrong with those topics. They simply don't satisfy the curiosity your mind keeps returning to. Over time, many people stop asking deeper questions. Not because they lose curiosity, because they grow tired of watching conversations end the moment they become interesting. So they become quieter, not emptier, quieter. There is an important difference. Perhaps this explains why intelligence is so often invisible. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always dominate conversations. Sometimes it listens. Sometimes it questions. Sometimes it doubts. Sometimes it notices things nobody else seems to see. And sometimes it spends years believing those qualities are flaws. Today, researchers increasingly recognize that intelligence also changes how people experience the world, how they notice, how they connect ideas, how they process emotion, how they respond to uncertainty, how deeply they experience ordinary life. If these experiences feel familiar, it doesn't automatically mean you have an exceptionally high IQ. Many other personality traits and life experiences can produce similar patterns. But it does suggest something worth considering. Maybe you've spent years criticizing yourself for traits that deserve understanding instead. Maybe your need for quiet isn't weakness. Maybe your questions aren't overthinking. Maybe your sensitivity isn't immaturity. Maybe your uncertainty isn't a lack of confidence. Maybe your mind has simply been trying to understand a world that is far more complicated than most people ever stop long enough to notice. Because sometimes, the people who appear the quietest are carrying the loudest worlds inside their minds.